What is your mind? It is your preference giving rise to thinking and emotions. Think of it as a construction of beliefs that guide you where you prefer, even if that means protecting yourself by pushing some things away. The mind will do this on its own. Your energy started in the past, but still on a journey to complete this task. Sometimes these journeys are continuous. In time, the mind can even push you around if you are not compliant to its will. In this way, it seems to take on a life of its own, even though you created it. But in the world of cause and effect, it is in effect. Like an echo, it is the reflection of something else and can be dismantled. So where does all your preference come from? From you, of course. From your view. From your view, you are separate from all things around you. Because all other things are not you, a mind is required to understand, protect, and thrive in a world of possible danger. Like your perspective of the world right now. You cannot imagine being safe in this world without protection. And now imagine a world of billions of separate viewpoints, all looking at you with measurement and suspicion, and you will understand the world you live in. Our natural desire to express our love freely, combined with preference, leads to conflict, anger, jealousy, depression, and emotional pain as we compete with others, expressing their love freely and with their preference, often directed at the same things. Love without preference is boundless and far less complicated. Consequently, it is the mind that stands in the way of Buddhahood. So your mind started with preference, and because your preferences began at zero, your mind in the beginning did not exist. Your consciousness did, but not your mind. As your preferences grew, your mind grew, because you needed to control circumstances, and this required planning. Is your natural freedom and choice restricted by the control and planning of your mind? How controlling is your mind? Can you end this control? Of course you can. For just as preference, or to be comfortable only one way, grows your mind, acceptance, or finding comfort in many ways, erases it. But not fake acceptance, but by really asking yourself, why should there be more ways than my way? Why does my neighbor deserve as much consideration as I demand? And is the fact that I am struggling with giving consideration to others proof that my thinking is imbalanced in some way? Am I becoming too self-centered, which is really to be too controlled by my belief that I am separate from all things? For that is what self-centered means. Real thinking here leads to real breakthroughs, to how we give freedom to others, and this will have a positive effect on the size of our mind. Learning to be happy easily leaves us content more often, and leaves the mind with little to do, but be comfortable. The mind is karma, the result of something. It results from seeing yourself as separate from your universe, your world, and your community. Without this separation, the mind cannot exist. For this reason, there is no mind on the other side of this. For just as your mind started because of a misconception of who you were, it will be dissolved by forming a greater self-understanding than you have now. And if your mind dissolves and you are left, what are you? Consciousness, now free of the mind. Before you were consciousness listening to the mind, thinking you were the mind. But you were never your mind, a simple structure of thought based on preference, based on self-definition, based on an error. And if you are not separate from all things, the misconception that created the mind, that created your preference, that created your rules and impulses, but you are simply one thing. Now what are you? Consciousness without separation. Universal consciousness. The divine consciousness. However you wish to define it. And what happens to those things created in misconception? They would all be gone, swept away by a new way of thinking. But how do we know we are one thing? The first way is to see how life formed on this planet. Do you see a multitude of variations of life here today? Certainly you do. I know we have lost some from misuse and from neglect, but still many remain. Were there less in earlier moments of life? Surely we can agree there were less variations as we get closer to life's beginning. And finally we get to the very beginning of it, the birth of life on our planet. It began as cellular life, single-celled beings capable of basic awareness and sustainability, life as we know it. And how did this life expand? Each cell divides its material into two and becomes two cells. This is called cellular mitosis. But at no time in this process was a new consciousness added. Only one consciousness, now divided into two. And so it went for some time until there were billions of cells, billions and billions of individual units now sharing the same consciousness. The same being now in different places, having different history. And then came variation as cells so similar were targeted by disease. First came cellular division, then came variation, both in cells and then in beings created by those cells until we reach the moment of today. But still, at no time was there an addition of a new consciousness. Same one, only the original awareness, now spread through every cell and every being alive today, in you and in me. You see, your way of seeing yourself and others is really only a concept, a perspective. The correct concept creates no karma, no backsplash, no unhealth. Like a diver hitting the water, we are looking for no wake, and the mind is simply the unhealthy backsplash of a poorly presented concept of who you are. The perfect perspective creates no such ripple, and the mind dissolves. Think of it this way. Before we had the idea of leaf and bark and roots, we only saw trees. At some point in time, somebody thought up these differences and created names and ideas for them, and then taught these ideas to you. So now, you see a tree as different components, but they are not. They are a single tree growing roots and forming branches and growing leaves, but only variations of how a single tree grows. For a leaf is not a leaf without the rest of the tree attached to it, and no tree can exist without its roots. So these things are not inseparable. They are not separate from the tree. For if a tree is separated from its leaves and its roots, it will not survive. Living a separated life is impossible for the tree. And you are the same way. You may have the perception that you are separate from the world and universe and all things, but you cannot materially exist for one moment without any of these things. You exist materially because of these things, and are sustained by these things. And even if you try, you can only separate yourself from our planet for only a short period of time and at your own peril. And when your body ends, it will not only return to this planet, it will become this planet. Indivisibility is our true state of being. Now, what would you be if you believed you were one divine consciousness surrounded by a universe of your own energy and your own power? I guess you would not be threatened any longer. You would not need the mind and all its preferences to be comfortable in the least. And really, how comfortable were you as you spent all your time fighting with others? The mind ends because choice makes no sense in a world where all things must be cared for equally, must be loved equally. Choice, and that is all that your mind is making, is only needed when you are about to leave something behind that you should have loved and understood better. Leave nothing behind and love everything, and that is the answer to ending the mind.